Does it make sense to buy the Galaxy S25 FE over the Galaxy S25 or A56? I'm going to answer this question by testing every aspect of these phones, including camera, performance, and battery life. And more, and I bought all three devices with my own money. Between the three phones, the S25 is the smallest and weighs only 162 grams, while the S25 FE weighs 190 and has a similar triple camera style as the S25. And the A56 weighs 198 grams, but has a different camera bump than the Galaxy S series. Both S series phones are IP68, but the A56 is only IP67, meaning it cannot be immersed in water. The S25 and S25 FE have the same aluminum frame. The A56 frame is also made out of aluminum, but it is not the same enhanced material as the other two. The S25 is a compact phone at only 6.2 inches, while the other two are 6.7 inches. The S25 is the only phone with a LTPO display, meaning the refresh rate is variable and helps with battery life. They all have a similar Full HD resolution, which means since the S25 has a smaller display, it is much sharper than the other two and has a higher pixel density. The S25 is the only one here with a better ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, while the other two use optical ones. The S25 uses Gorilla Glass Victus 2, while the other two use Victus Plus. The S25 goes up to 2600 nits, while the other two go up to 1900 nits. But bear in mind that our eyes see light logarithmically and not linearly, so the difference between 1900 and 2600 is not as big as you may think. The battery capacity of the S25 is 4000 mAh. The S25 FE is 4900 mAh and the A56 is 5000. To start the battery test, I put a 5G SIM card in all phones, set them to the same brightness using a lux meter, and ran YouTube for around an hour on Wi-Fi. By the end of the test, all phones were at 98% battery left and had a similar temperature under 30 degrees Celsius and 86 degrees Fahrenheit. All three phones have a triple camera system. The difference is that the S25 and S25 FE has a third telephoto lens, while the A56 has a macro lens instead. The main camera of all three is 50 megapixel, f1.8, 1 to 1.57 inch. The color processing is a bit different though. The S25 and S25 FE are more true to life, while the A56 made the rays a bit vivid. The same goes for my face. The S25 and S25 FE are more or less similar, with the S25 FE being more contrasty between the two, while the A56 skin tone is more magenta. On portrait mode though, I actually prefer the photo from the A56, not gonna lie. The S25 raised the shadows a bit, which is a characteristic of Galaxy phones with Snapdragon, and the S25 FE added more contrast, which is a characteristic of Galaxy phones with Exynos. I took this photo in the basement with almost zero light, and I prefer the photo on the S25 FE over the S25 and A56. For video, the S25 can take up to 8K and also 120 frames per second on 4K. Here on the 4K 30 frames per second, the colors are nicely processed. The S25 FE colors are a little bit colder. This one can also take 8K and 120 frames per second on 4K in Pro video mode. The A56 colors are too vivid for my taste and a bit artificial. The A56 only does 4K and up to 30 frames per second. Both the S25 and S25 FE have a 3x telephoto lens, while the A56 lacks that option. That means on 3x zoom, the quality on the S25 and S25 FE is going to be better. The images are going to be sharper, and for example, if we zoom in to the subject, you can see the S25 has the most detail with its 12 megapixel telephoto lens, while the S25 FE is noisier with its 8 megapixel lens, and the A56 is blurry. Also, the S25 and S25 FE can zoom up to 30 times, while the A56 is capped at 10 times. They also have a more or less similar ultrawide lens, and none of the ultrawide lenses supports macro. Now we are testing the microphone quality. I'm talking to the Galaxy S25. we are testing the microphone quality of the Galaxy S25. We are testing the Galaxy S25 FE. We are testing the microphone quality of the Galaxy S25 FE. And now we are on the A56. We are checking the microphone quality of the Galaxy A56. The S25 FE has an improved selfie camera, and here the colors on the S25 and S25 FE are more accurate for my skin tone, while the A56 again has a bit of a magenta tint. I'll show you more pictures when it gets dark later. Also, the S25 gets the most camera features. For example, in advanced video mode, you can shoot in log and also get the high bitrate options. On the S25 FE, you get the high bitrate option, but there is no log, and on the A56, you get neither of these options. For performance, the S25 is using the best chipset for Android phones, which is the Snapdragon 8 Elite Galaxy Edition. The S25 FE is using the Exynos 2400, which, as the name suggests, is last year's Exynos chipset made in Samsung's Foundry. The A56 is using a mid-range chipset, the Exynos 1580. The S25 is running on 12GB of RAM, while the other two have 8GB. I ran two benchmarks to test performance. The first was AnTuTu. AnTuTu is a benchmark that tests a wide variety of performance matrices. The S25 got 2.3 million, the S25 FE got almost 1.6 million, and the A56 got only 850K. For the second test, I ran Geekbench. Here, the multi-core score for the S25 was around 8.9K, the S25 FE got 6.7K, and the A56 got 3.8K. To continue testing the battery, I put all phones to run a simple game that I wrote, which is just a bunch of cubes and particles colliding. And I capped the FPS to 30. By the end of the test, the S25 was at 52%, the S25 FE at 58%, and the A56 at 65%. It was about to be a total eclipse, so I picked up the phones and used the Galaxy S25 Expert Raw to find the exact locations of the moon. The other two phones do not support Expert Raw. I put all phones to capture a hyperlapse. The colors and processing on them were very different. The S25 and S25 FE do more denoising, while the A56 footage has a lot of noise. Also, the colors of the sky on the S25 and S25 FE is very close, while the A56 colors is a bit purplish. On this picture of the total eclipse, you can once again see that the A56 is doing a lot more processing and saturating the colors more than the other two phones. I also thought you might appreciate the photo I took with my Sony camera of the same scene. I went back home, and now the battery percentage is 24, 34, and 44%. For software support, the S25 and S25 FE get 7 years, while the A56 gets 6 years, which means you will have support until 2031. Generally speaking, the series always get better software support and more software feature. It starts with the S25, then the S25 FE, and usually features will trickle down to A56 over time, including software updates. There are also some features missing. For example, on all phones, you have AI selects, but the feature works a bit slow on the A56. The S25 and S25 FE, however, have the writing assist to summarize or translate text, but the A56 lacks this option. I disconnected the phones from Wi-Fi to run the test on 5G. I ran YouTube again for another hour. After that, I ran Google Meet in the background to drain the batteries further. The S25 FE has 25% more battery capacity compared to the S25, so it is not surprising it is doing better in this test, and the A56 also has a much less power-hungry processor. Even for simple tasks like hyperlapse or taking video and photos, the more powerful chipset is going to drain faster, but also, of course, offer more raw power for potentially creating better videos and giving better overall experience. Temperature-wise, the S25 and S25 FE are running at the same temperature, while the A56 is cooler. The S25 FE should run cooler since it is bigger phone, but the less efficient chipset doesn't let the phone run cooler than this. I put the phones back on Wi-Fi to run the last part of the test. The S25 was the first phone to die after 5 hours and 2 minutes. The Galaxy S25 FE was able to run a lot longer, and after 5 hours and 49 minutes, it also left the chat. The A56 was the last man standing and went for another 39 minutes, leaving the chat at 6 hours and 28 minutes. Please note again that the mid-range chipset is generally going to last longer in heavy tests like this, where we push the chipsets. The charging speed of the S25 is 25 watts, while the other two are 45 watts. But since the S25 has a lower battery capacity, there shouldn't be a big difference in charging speed. The S25 and S25 FE do support Qi2 wireless charging. None of them have magnets inside though. Overall, I find the S25 FE a decent option if you want good performance with a reasonable price tag and are okay sacrificing some features like the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner. The A56 is a decent option, but the phone is definitely not as smooth as the S-series phone. The S25 is one of the best options right now if you are looking for a compact phone. You can save some money by going the last year's S24 FE too. If you want to see the comparison of the S25 FE versus the S24 FE, you can watch this video next. Thanks for tuning in to Tecmo, and I will see you in the next one.